Welcome to another episode of Black Swan Revelations. My name is Shane, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about Israel's final trump, Israel's trump card. What is it? What is their trump card? So we're going to be talking about this, and we're going to go deep. Every once in a while, you get to a point where there's just so much to unpack. Sometimes you don't even know where to begin when you do a bit of a deep dive like this, when you start talking about Israel's capability when it comes to nukes and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to be talking about the Samson option. For some reason, I can't let it go. So we're going to talk about this a little bit. And if you're interested in this kind of thing, stick around. We're going to go into the book of Judges, and we're going to do a bit of a deep dive. And maybe you'll learn some things. Maybe this will be something new. Maybe this will cause you to read the book of Judges. There's lots of stuff going on. Lots of stuff. It's crazy. We might even back up a little bit and go to Genesis. I think that might be a good place to start. Let's go to Genesis 25. I think this is a good place to start. Genesis 25. So we're going to be talking about Esau briefly. So this is Genesis 25, verse 29. And Jacob sawed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, "Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint." Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, "Sell me this day thy birthright." And Esau said, "Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me?" And Jacob said, "Swear to me this day." And he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. It's quite interesting. As you'll come across when you go into the Old Testament, the birthright is a big deal. You get double honor, double possessions, if you will. You get first crack at the inheritance, and then whatever's left over gets divvied up amongst the rest of the siblings. Obviously, the more siblings, the less they get, because most of it goes to the firstborn. So it's interesting that Esau despised his birthright and gave that up. And Jacob convinced him to give up his birthright. And a little bit later, we witness that Esau is a little bit bitter for this, and he's basically thinking, the second my father dies, I'm going to take care of this guy. I am going to take Jacob out. I'm going to destroy him with extreme prejudice. And I think somehow, whether she just knew this instinctively, whether she knew what her son's tendency, and the person I'm talking about is Rachel, she perhaps overheard this and then decided to send her son away. Did I say Rachel? It's actually Rebecca. Rebecca overheard this. And she didn't want to lose both her kids in one day, both of them, because they probably would have fought to the death. So she overheard this. This was actually a little bit later, but she overheard that her husband was going to give the blessing to Esau because he was the firstborn. So then he took off, and Rachel said, just basically, do what I say. I need you to disguise yourself like your brother. You guys are virtually twins anyway, virtually identical twins. And I want you one second. Planning a men's retreat this weekend. All right. So yeah, planning a men's retreat this weekend. And we haven't done this retreat in 5 years. And I think the last time we did it, we had like 49, 50 people. I thought that was a pretty good crowd. So this was my first crack at it. First time doing an event of this magnitude. And so we decided to put up 100 tickets. It's like $125. You get 4 meals, get to stay overnight, and it's a retreat. We have a guest speaker, get to do some events, a little bit of archery, very similar to what Esau was basically going to do. He's going to go get some food. He's going to go hunt. He's going to make some of that fantastic porridge that his father liked. So we're doing that this weekend. We're doing that on Friday, and our goal was to sell 100 tickets. Like that was the max. Max is 100. If we had 70 people, anything above 70 would be considered a win, as in there's enough interest. Well, we sold 93 tickets. So we basically doubled in size. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty fun. That's the first time I've ever had to organize an event. Lots of phone calls, lots of emails, all that kind of stuff while I'm trying to do my YouTube channel as well. So that'll be fun. That'll be a fun time. 24 hours. So that's, we're just finalizing a few things today. So that's why my phone is buzzing right now. Anyways, Jacob's gone, or Esau's gone. Rachel's like, do what I tell you. I need you to pretend that you're your brother. This is important for later, but I need you to wear his clothes and to simulate him. I want you to pretend that you're him. And if we can pass this off, you will get your older brother's inheritance, his birthright, if you will. But you're going to have to do exactly what I say. You're going to have to wear clothes, and we're going to put some fur, which gives you an idea of how hairy this guy was. He's a hairy beast. And Rachel said, I'll make this porridge, lentils, if you will. I call it porridge, but lentil soup, if you will. And the idea behind it is Rachel knew exactly what her husband, or Rebecca knew exactly what her husband liked. So then she grabbed some clothes from Esau's wardrobe, dressed him up. Jacob goes to present himself, and Isaac says, "Who are you?" And you kind of wonder, like, did he know, or was he kind of like so old that he wasn't aware? Maybe he didn't have spatial awareness, all this kind of stuff, where he couldn't tell who was around him. It's just kind of interesting because I think his eyes were pretty dim at this time. And maybe that's perhaps how they were able to fool him. But Isaac basically said right out of the gate, "Who are you? You smell like Esau, but you sound like Jacob." So now Jacob's kind of put in a position now. Now he has to pretend that he's Esau. He's like, I'm Esau. I'm your firstborn. So it's interesting that he used another person's name. He didn't use his name. He used another person's identity. He used another person's identity in order to get the inheritance. And we know the story. We know how that goes. Esau came back and he's like, what is going on? It's like, he basically right out of the gate, he's like, here you go, Father. Just as Jacob's leaving, Esau shows up. He's like, here's your stew. Here's your porridge. And Isaac was trembling because he realized what had happened. I believe he got fooled. And so Esau was mad and he's like, don't you have another blessing for me? Like, that's it. That's all I get. It's very, very different than what Abraham gave, because Abraham basically sent off Ishmael, blessed him and all this kind of stuff. And obviously didn't give him very much inheritance at the beginning, but later I believe he did, because Isaac had the bulk, obviously, of the inheritance, because that's why Sarah sent away, what is her name? Hagar. Sent her away. It's like, I don't want this kid to have any of this inheritance from my son. I don't want this guy to one day try and take this away. So off they go. And then later in life, I believe Abraham married some more women. And at the end of his life, he was able to dish out an inheritance as well, because he was quite wealthy. And Ishmael and Isaac both buried their father Abraham, which is kind of interesting, because it does say that prophetically that Ishmael was always going to be around during his lifetime, around his brothers. Yeah, he'd be a little bit wild and all this kind of stuff. They weren't able to tame him. But it's interesting that he actually showed up for the funeral and buried Abraham alongside of Isaac. So that's kind of interesting. So for an inheritance, basically this time around, Isaac gave it seems like he gave just about everything to Jacob. And Esau said, isn't he correctly named? And people go, oh, that means liar. Jacob's liar and all this kind of stuff. That's what that means, liar. It's not liar. It's supplanter. What? What does that mean? What? I thought Jacob was a liar. He's a supplanter. What does that mean? Basically, he looks, analyzes the situation, and figures out a way to do things better. He's efficient, almost like an engineer, if you will. He can look at something, study it, look at it from every angle, and then he could fix it and make it better. That's what a supplanter is basically you're replacing what was in existence and you're making it better. So this is what Esau was mad about, is you have this son aptly named supplanter. He's supplanting me right now. He just pretended that he was me, and it worked on you. You gave him my birthright, and off he went. And that's when Rebecca said, I overheard your son. I know he's going to kill you. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Why? So go to my brother, I want to say Laban, and go hang out with him. Go away. So that's what Jacob did. He fled. But it's interesting to have a name like that, supplant. supplanter. Almost like you're taking someone's place, you're displanting them, you're displacing them, and you're posing like someone else. You're coming in almost like a wolf in some ways in sheep's clothing. To everyone else, they think you're one person, but really deep down inside, you're someone else. You have a different identity. And this is what was going on with regards to Jacob and Esau. That's what supplanting means. And you'll see this later. If you don't believe me, just think about it. When Jacob met up with Laban, and Laban tried to trick him like 10 times. Tried to trick him 10 times with his wages. And every time, Jacob came out ahead through a little bit of DNA engineering, if you will. I like saying if you will. But he mastered the art of DNA manipulation in regards to cattle, in regards to sheep and goats. He was a master at engineering, making animals better. How would he do it? Well, he would have a look. He would be studying the flocks, and he made a deal with Laban. He said, if these ones are streaked and speckled or whatever, then those are yours, and I get these ones. Or it's the opposite, whichever, wind streak, whatever. The point is, he was looking at them and going, I notice that these type of sheep are very aggressive in nature, and they get the best of the female sheep because they just get in there right away. And the weaker ones move away. So then the next generation is a little bit more assertive as well because of their parents. And he noticed this. He was observing this. So whenever he saw them speckled or spotted or whatever, he would separate those ones. And then he would set up a trough, basically a barrier that the stronger sheep or goats would actually have to go through that barrier, through the trough, in order to mate. So if there was a sheep there, a female sheep, only the strong ones would be able to get over the trough, get through it because they're stronger, they're physically fit, all the stuff. The weaker ones wouldn't make it, and they would mate with the other weaker sheep. But he would observe the strong ones and start separating them. And he would just do that continually. And then eventually, because they were so strong, that the weaker herds would be over here, and the stronger ones would be over here, and they would multiply. He would do that with everything. Everything was working for the supplanter. He's gifted. You probably know people like this that are gifted. You show them a woodshed and it's like all broken and busted up, and there's wood missing, screws missing, whatever. The light doesn't work. And they get their hands on it, and this shed is just renovated. It's beautiful. You can have barbecues inside there, whatever. Whatever they touch turns to gold. That's Jacob. That's what he was like. So now you have that scenario. Then you have a little bit later where you have one of the sons. And it's interesting that Isaac was not the firstborn for Abraham, but he was the firstborn for Sarah, which is kind of interesting. It's almost like this supplanting method gets passed down to generations, because then you see Jacob and Esau do it. Then you see Judah, his two sons, Pharez and what was the other son's name? I can never remember those guys. What were his two sons' names? I don't want to look it up. I'm too lazy to look it up. I can't remember. It'll come to me. One of them is Pharez. Just forget the other one. Forget the other person's name. Anyway, they're twins. So one of them stuck his hand out, and then they tied a scarlet thread around it, and then he put his hand in, and then out came Perez, supplanting his other brother. And they were shocked. They're like, how did this person breach through the womb and come out first? How did that happen? It's kind of interesting. That was, of course, the sons of Tamar. Because the first two sons didn't work out so good, because Judah went out and married a Canaanite woman, which would have been horrible because they weren't supposed to do that. So this Canaanite woman had 3 sons. Don't ask me what their names are, but she had 3 sons. First one, can't remember the first one's name, but he died. Second one, Onan, I believe is the second son's name. And he realized that if he had a son, it wouldn't be his. It would belong to Tamar in order to redeem, to be a kinsman redeemer to her brother, to his brother. And he didn't want to do that, so he spilled his semen on the ground, and it displeased God, and God slew him for that action. So Tamar was left as a widow, and Judah said to her, when my son grows up, I will give him, you will be his wife. But deep down inside, Judah was like, I lost 2 of my first sons because of this woman indirectly. I'm not going to do it with the third, because basically I'll lose my inheritance. So I'll just put her off to the side for now. And Tamar knew this and realized this, so then she went out into the byways, set up a little tent, pretended that she was a harlot, and one day after sheep shearing, Judah came by and was kind of looking around a little bit. It's like, well, I don't have a wife or anything. You get me a little something, and then ended up sleeping with Tamar. And then in order to do that, she said, you're going to need to give me something as money. And he's like, I don't have any money. All I have is my signet, my ring, and I think my pledge. It might have been a rod or something. She's like, fine, give that to me. He slept with her, got her pregnant, and then went back, and he went to grab, I believe it was like a sheep, to give to her so that he can get his pledge and his ring back. And when he sent the messenger, because he was too embarrassed himself to go, the messenger asked around. They said, there's never been a harlot in this area at all. So Judah's response was, I am going to be a laughing stock now, because I don't have my pledge anymore. I don't have my ring. And then later he found out that through the rumorville that his daughter was pregnant. She played the harlot. He was like, well, we got to burn her. Them's the rules. Them's the rules. We got to burn her. And it's kind of interesting, because you have to remember, this was before the 10 Commandments. This was before Moses taking Israel to Mount Sinai. This was way before, but to Judah, this is like, yeah, this seems like the proper thing to do, to burn his daughter. So then when they approached her, she said, whoever owns these, he is the father. So then they presented the items to Judah, and Judah realized that this woman was actually indeed more righteous than he, because he didn't give his youngest son to be her husband, even though he was now of age. He just refused to do it. So that's when we get Pharez and his brother, that I can't remember what the name is. Doesn't matter. We don't hear about him anymore anyway. But Phares became part of the lineage of Jesus Christ, which is kind of interesting. So where am I going with all this stuff? I'm building a case of why Israel is in a bit of a predicament right now and what's going on. And we're going to talk about their options. So I'm trying to build this case that this has happened in the Old Testament, where someone would come in and pretend they're someone else and then take their identity away and then just move on like nothing happened. So we see this happen a little bit later in the book of Judges, when this was just after Samson destroyed the Philistines. And we're going to talk about the Samson option with regards to Israel. But after Samson dies, his brothers come to get him. Delilah gets paid off, gets her 1,100 shekels of silver. And basically in the next chapter, I think it's chapter 14, we see a gentleman by the name of Micah, who is a Levite, show up on the scene. And this guy is a bit of an idol worshiper, if you will. And he needs a priest. He needs someone. Or he's from the tribe of Judah, I should say. And he needs a priest. So he finds a Levite, I believe. And the Levites basically, I'll be your priest and all this kind of stuff. And Micah sets up an idol, an ephod, I believe. So this is all set up. And then after Micah leaves, there's a band of soldiers show up. And they're Danites. And they talk to this Levite priest. They basically convince him. They say, is it better to be a priest for one man, or is it better to be a priest of a whole house? Come with us. So then the priest went with the Danites. And then Micah found out that they took his idol and his priest, rode after him. And the Danites are basically, what in the world are you doing? Chasing us down like this in such a hurry. Why are you chasing us? And Micah is like, you're asking me? You just raided my home. You took my idols and you took my priest. And you're asking me, why am I chasing you in hastiness? Your men took my idol and my priest. And basically the leader of the Danites said, you just basically watch your tongue. You're lucky I don't kill you. Scatter. Get out of here. So Micah left, went back. Danites wanted to expand. They wanted to expand their territory. They weren't happy with what Joshua gave to the Danites. They felt it was too small. And it was really the way that territory was allotted was according to your population. So Judah had the biggest population, and arguably you can say the half tribe of Manasseh and the half tribe of Ephraim also had, if you combine them together, had a huge amount of people as well. So they got a huge chunk of land. Judah had a huge chunk of land. The Danites didn't have a huge chunk of land. And I don't think the Benjamites had very much land either. But the Danites weren't happy. So they're like, we are out of here. Let's go. So they have a Levite and they're heading north. And they send out 5 spies to the north. And there was a nation called the Zidonians, and they were too far away from protection, but they were living peaceably. They were living at peace, just moseying around, building, harvesting crops, all this kind of stuff, just living a peaceful life, not harming anyone. But if they were to sound an alarm, nobody would come to help them because they were too remote. And these 5 Danites said, this is a good place. Look at all this pasture and everything. Like, this is beautiful land. And these people are peaceable, meaning we can walk in and we can butcher them with our swords and they wouldn't even put up a resistance. So they went back, told it to the Danites, put on your swords. We're going to have some fun tonight. So off they went. They went up north. and they came upon the inhabitants that were living peaceably, and they slaughtered them. Men, women, children, slaughtered them all, dispossessed them, moved right in. And that's where they settled. So when you think about it, when the Assyrians came in to capture Israel, the Danites, if they stuck around, they would be the first ones to get caught. So there's a tradition, history, tradition, rumors that the Danites fled by ships. We see this with Deborah. She's like, why didn't you come and help us when we were fighting? You didn't help us. You stayed in your ships. So we know that they were accustomed to being in ships, perhaps fishermen, we don't know. But they, again, legend has it that they sailed away. But they lived in the north for a long time until the Assyrians came in and basically took the 10 northern tribes, of Israel, and Judah remained behind until the Babylonians came in and captured them and took them away. But then they came back, whereas the 10 northern tribes were dispersed, gone, dissipated, spread, mixed, intermingled. How do we know this? Well, they were not true worshipers of God. We know this after King Solomon lost his throne, after he died. His son Rehoboam took over, and basically a civil war was about to commence. And I forget who the priest was, but the priest basically said, like, don't do this because this is of God, the separation. So the 10 northern tribes had a king as well. And I'm trying to think where he came from. His name is Jeroboam. I think he fled to Egypt and came back and then took over for Israel, the 10 northern tribes. Oh, he might have been from the tribe of Ephraim, actually. That would make more sense. So we have the 10 northern tribes that are worried about the Israelites moving down south. When I say Israelites moving forward, I'm talking about the 10 northern tribes. They were worried that they were going to go to Jerusalem to worship in the temple. They're worried that they're going to go down there. So instead, what Jeroboam did is he built 2 golden calves, one in Samaria and then one in Dan, which is kind of interesting. And that is what began their idol worship. The 10 northern tribes worshipped idols continually. All of their kings were wicked, all of them. Whereas with the tribes, or with the kingdom of Judah, which includes the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Levi, they would have a good king, good king, bad king, bad king, bad king, good king, that kind of thing. But with Israel, all bad kings, all wicked. That's where you get King Ahab and all this stuff going on. So if you think about it, they are falling into idolatry. This is Israel falling into idolatry, and they had so many gods that it would make your head spin, worshiping Moloch, the Ammonite god, which is a descendant from Lot. So they would worship, they would put gods on all of their homes, and Judah was accused of this a little bit later as well, but not all the time, but a lot of the time, enough that they got dispersed into Babylon. But you have the 10 northern tribes that are basically idol worshippers, dedicating their firstborn into their homes by burying them alive, dedicating them alive to Molech, sleeping with each other, all kinds of atrocious idol worship, sacrifice, you name it, they did it. That's why they got carried away by the Assyrians. That's why they came and took over. Is because they were so wicked, and they were warned again and again and again. So it's interesting when you look at that, you look at the history that Israel, and again, you got to include Dan as an Israelite, as the 10 northern tribes. The Danites are part of that, and they were wicked. They basically wiped out a peaceful nation, took them out after they had their settlement because they weren't happy with their land, so they went and took over someone else's land. It's kind of interesting. And we see Ephraim as well, from time to time, up to no good. At times, a very powerful nation. And really, when you think of scripture that refers to Ephraim, you can interchange it with Israel. So when you think of Ephraim, you think of Israel. Because later in Ezekiel, when Ezekiel's talking about combining one day, bringing the two nations back, the stick of Ephraim, that's the 10 northern tribes, with the stick of Judah, which is Judah, Benjamin, and the Levites. Two nations will become one. By who? By Jesus Christ. Because Jesus Christ is their king, is the king of Israel. He's the Lord of lords, the King of kings. And there will come a time where it will actually be illegal for me to say this type of thing on YouTube. When I say that Jesus Christ is the King of Israel, it'll be illegal. You can't say that. Which begs the question, if Israel today is living in the land of Israel, who are they? Who are these people that are there that want nothing to do with Jesus Christ? Because if you were to go there as a Christian and you hand them a tract to a Jew, to an Israeli, I should say, chances are they either don't know anything about what you're talking about. Maybe they don't speak English, but for sure they don't understand what you're talking about. And when you mention Jesus Christ, they don't want anything to do with you. Partially because they're secular, partially because perhaps you run into someone that practices Judaism. Doesn't necessarily mean they read the Torah, but they practice it. And they don't want anything to do with Christianity, because to them that's blasphemy to say that Jesus Christ is their king. They are a democratic society. They don't have a king. How do we know this? Well, if you go back to Jesus' day, when he was on trial, they said we have no king. Caesar is our king. Caesar's our leader. Not this guy, Jesus. He's not our king. But if you go back to Samuel, one of the last judges, the last judge, they approached Samuel and said, we want a king, like all the other nations, like the Edomites, the Ammonites, we want a king. So because we want a king, we're demanding you to give us a king. And Samuel wept all night over that. And God said, don't weep, because they're not rejecting you, Samuel. They're rejecting me as their king. God Almighty as their king. So much that I'll get you to show them that I am the king. So see how it is kind of like it was either a rainy season or out of season for the crops. There was no rain. It wasn't that time of the year. And then God caused rain to come upon the crops and water them. And everybody fell to the ground and said, we've sinned. We made a mistake. God's our king. Our bad. Samuel says, too late. It's too late for that. I'm going to get you a king. And then he ended up giving him Saul, which is about, this guy was like 6'6", 6'8". He was a head and shoulders above everyone else. So that's how they got their king. They wished for a king, but by the time Jesus came, they don't have a king anymore. They don't want a king. They're done with the king idea, basically, since all their kings were wicked. And the land was basically called Judea by now, occupied by Rome. So it's interesting that they didn't want a king. And today, if you were to do a poll right now, you can just say, does Israel want a king? And I would guarantee that 95% of the people would say no. They don't want a king. They have a democratic society. They vote on everything. So if you approach them as a Christian and say, Jesus Christ is your king, they'll look at you like you have 5 heads or something. Like, this doesn't make sense. And if you talk to them about heaven, hey, we are joint heirs in Christ with your Messiah, Jesus Christ. Man, they might pick up stones and toss them at you right there, or spit on you or something. Because to them, that's blasphemy, that you would dare say something like that, that the Messiah that they're looking for, according to their rabbis, because most of them don't read the Old Testament. If they did, they'd probably see Jesus Christ in the Old Testament. But most of them don't read, just like a lot of Christians don't read the whole Bible. Sometimes we think because a person lives in Israel that they just read the Torah over and over and over again, or they read the whole Old Testament. They don't. It's like a lot of Christians don't read the whole Bible. So if you approach them as a Christian saying you need to be born again, you need to accept Jesus Christ, they're going to look at you like you have a hole in your head. They'll get mad. They'll get angry. Why? Because they don't want a king. And most likely they don't worship God himself. Because if they worship God, they would know Jesus Christ. If they know Jesus Christ, you're going to know the Father. I think that's pretty clear. I don't think I'm saying anything crazy right now. I don't think we went to crazy town yet. I'm just giving you a bit of a background that Israel, ever since Solomon had his kingdom taken away from him after he died and passed to his son, they've been 2 nations. And even before King David, they were basically 2 nations. There were lots of times where they would do their own thing. North against south. Lots of times you would see this. Israel get together and they come against the Benjamites, almost making them extinct. Almost wiped them out completely. So it's interesting that after 2,000 years, May 17, 1948, some Jews that are scattered that call themselves Israelites, they don't call themselves, they don't acknowledge themselves from the tribe of Judah or the tribe of Benjamin. You can argue there might be some people that say, yeah, I'm from the tribe of Benjamin, whatever. But my point is that most of them were most likely Israelites, most likely that were coming back to their homeland. What do I mean by that? Well, they could have been part of the 10 northern tribes, for all we know. They don't want to acknowledge the tribes today. You just talk to them. They don't care what tribe you're from. If myself or my sister were to say, hey, I'm from the tribe of Zebulun, let me in, I'd be like, no. Why? Because you weren't born here after 1948. And your mother wasn't born here after 1948. And you don't practice Judaism. You're not allowed here. You're not welcome to be an Israeli if you don't practice Judaism and if you're not born here, if your mother's not born in Israel after 1948. So it becomes a bit of a problem if you're, let's just say you go back in time to Judah or his son Perez, they might not have been welcome by today's standards into Israel. It's like, hey, you don't practice Judaism. Yeah, well, it wasn't invented back then. Sorry, you weren't born after 1948, so you can't come in. Their current prime minister, Netanyahu, he was born in 1948, I believe, 49, in Israel. The other ones were born in like Poland, Russia, Ukraine, different areas, all the ones before 1948. Just kind of interesting. Most of the Jews, I guess, came from northeastern Europe, if you will. And they call themselves Israelites. Or not Israelites. They call themselves Israel. That's their nation. It's called Israel, a democratic state. So it's just kind of interesting. So now they have rules in place that basically says we're never going to be scattered again. What does that remind you of? Well, Moses said to Israel, the Israelites, the 12 tribes, said, look, if you don't worship me, I will scatter you. If you worship other gods, I will scatter you. So the 10 northern tribes got scattered, and then the 3 southern tribes got sent to Babylon, and then they came back after 70 years. So you have a group of people today that are like, look, we do not want to get scattered like our ancestors were. You are not kicking us out ever again for the history of mankind. You will never do that. And we're going to make sure of it because we're going to build weapons that could make sure and deter people from destroying us, from scattering us. We're never going to be anyone's slave again. We're never going to get captured and sent away to another nation that we forget about our heritage. We're not going to do that. If anyone threatens us, we will threaten them back with extreme prejudice. Meaning, here's the force level somebody comes at Israel, they will match it. Or if they're threatened even more, they will supersede it and wipe them out completely so that they will never threaten them again. They will think twice the next time they are threatened. And I don't think I'm saying anything crazy so far. This is their mandate, is not to get spread out again. And I don't blame them. I honestly don't blame them. You don't want someone to come in and displace you and move you around so that you forget your heritage and all this stuff. So I don't blame Israel for that. I'm just saying their mindset is, if you come at us, we will match the force or exceed whatever force you come at us with. So you have the Iron Dome. You have also the iron laser that's being tested quite a bit as well. But let's just focus on the Iron Dome. You have the Iron Dome, which is designed to take out rockets. Basically, if you've ever played that video game Missile Command, laser goes up, and then just before the bombs are coming down to hit the earth, they blow up, and then these blow up. So that's how the Iron Dome works. Basically sends rockets up in close proximity to rockets coming in, and they explode. So they don't have to touch the rockets coming in. They just have to get close. And then when they explode, it causes the rockets coming in from Lebanon, from Iran, from wherever. The Iron Dome can handle it. But if it gets overwhelmed, that could be a problem for Israel. Enter David's sling, another weapon that they have that goes a little bit further. And the idea behind David's sling is it actually activates. Do I have a marker? Yeah, here. Basically, it acts in 2 stages. So this is David's sling. Let's put it like this. Yeah, like that. Like this. Okay. So basically, it launches vertical, and it breaks off. And this thing can go in any direction, 360 degrees. Doesn't matter. So launches, first stage launches, and then it takes off in any degree. So it could actually go here and then go backwards somewhere and hit its target. And the idea is to actually hit it dead on. That's how David's sling works, and it can cover more territory. Then you have Arrow 3, which I believe reaches up to like 1,000 kilometers. So 3 stages of weapons that we know of. And we also have the iron laser, which basically, I believe the cost is like $1,000, $3,000 to basically shoot down drones, planes, whatever, rockets, whatever. It's cheap. Whereas it costs about $50,000 American to launch one rocket from the Iron Dome. And you could exhaust the Iron Dome. But if you have the Iron Dome in operation, getting all the close, anything that gets close to strategic targets, because they don't go after everything. They just go after certain rockets that, hey, if they're going through a populated city, we're going to take out those rockets with the Iron Dome. And then if they're further out, Maybe they're a little bit smaller in scale. Maybe they're drones or whatever. We'll use David's sling. And then after that, we'll use arrow 3. And after that, Samson option. What is Samson option? Total annihilation for the Middle East. That's the last trump. That's their trump card. That trumps everything. So if you're looking at a deck of cards against Israel, one of those cards could be a trump card, a wild card, a joker. And if you tick them off enough, if you put them in a corner, that trump card will show up. And it's total annihilation for all of the Middle East. That's the Samson option. Now, if you ask them, they will say, no, everything we have is just reasonable. It's to promote peace. It's to protect our civilians. But deep down inside, they're coming up with weapons. And again, I'm not trying to say that this is evil. I'm just saying the mentality is to save themselves, to not be scattered. And this goes all the way back to Deuteronomy when Moses said, you will be scattered because you're worshiping other gods. And now you get Israelis saying, we will never be scattered. And the easiest way to fix that, to not be scattered, is to have one God, to worship one God. And you don't have to worry about it. You can't have weapons to protect you from God displacing you. The only way to do that is to worship one God. And if you worship the Father, you got to worship the Son, which is Jesus Christ. Can't have one without the other. That's the predicament. That's the corner that Israel is in right now because they're relying on their weapons. And the last weapon, if you push them in a corner, is their trump card, which is the Samson option. And again, they're not going to tell you, they're not going to say, oh yeah, we have that. Our goal is to wipe out the Middle East. That's not their goal. Their goal is if you are invading us and you're taking over, you're breaching our walls, you're breaching our cities, overrunning us, we're going to hit the detonation button and we're going to take everybody out. All of the Middle East is gone, vaporized in smoke and ash. That's the Samson option. If you don't think they're capable of doing that, then all you have to do is you have to read Judges 13, 14, 15, 16, where Samson was put in a corner. He had his eyes put out. He was basically raped in prison, and they brought him before the Philistine lords that captured him and all their leaders in order to make fun of him, butt naked. And a lad guided him to some pillars, and he said, let me put my hands on these pillars, and Lord, help avenge me for my eyes that they took out. Just one last time. And that one action took out everybody in that building, and he killed more people in his death than he did while he was alive. That is the Samson option. That was his last option, was to take out all the leaders before he dies. So this is in play with Israel, that they can take you out if you put them in a corner of no return. If they feel like they're going to get annihilated, they'll push the button. Now the question is, well, nobody would do that. Well, you've never been pushed in a corner like they have. You've never been scattered for thousands of years like they have. You've never been abused in every nation like they have. So you can't say in your pretty little office that you wouldn't do the same thing. You wouldn't have your finger over that button anytime someone threatens your home. It's like, if you come in my home, the whole home goes up. The whole block goes up. The whole town goes up in smoke if you so much as break into my home. That's what we're talking about with Israel. We're talking about that they have the capability to do that. This is what stops them from being extinct, because anytime someone from Iran is like, we got to get rid of Israel, we got to take them out, their generals, their lords could say, 1 second there, hold that thumb, there you go, put that away. If you do that, we're gone. all our gold, all our money, all our crops, everything, everyone dies. If you push that button to nuke Israel, we are gone. That all of a sudden, that's a different game. When you have people on buttons ready to push it, and they have people that say, hey, look, if you do that, we're done. We're extinct. If you don't think Israel has that technology, I think you're kidding yourself. They're working with the U.S. constantly on bettering their weapons. I even believe the Iron Dome was designed by the Americans. And Zelensky showed up one day a couple of years ago in Israel and said, please give me the Iron Dome so I can defend myself against Putin. And Israel said, no. We have a deal. We have a pact with Russia over Syria, which means if Syria ever attacks us, we can attack them. And because Russia owns the airspace over Syria, they will look the other way. They'll turn a blind eye to us attacking Syria. If Syria attacks us, we can attack them, and Russia won't do anything. That's the agreement that we have. If I give you, President Zelensky, the Iron Dome, we don't know what you're going to do with it. Yeah, you can say you're going to defend against Russia, but if you sold it to Iran, if you sold it to Damascus, if you sold it to anywhere else, we're toast. We're toast. So we're not giving you the Iron Dome. So Zelensky left, dragging his knuckles, mad at Israel, even though his parents are Jewish. Mad that they didn't give him the Iron Dome. And then a few months ago, Finland actually has access now to David Sling, $340 million. David Sling is now in Finland, meaning they're on the border of Russia. If you don't think Russia's feeling the heat a little bit from NATO, you're kidding yourself. This is why, one of the reasons why they went after Ukraine is because there was talks of Ukraine joining NATO. And because Finland's part of NATO, they made a deal with Israel, and Israel made a deal to sell David Sling. Finland's going to be fine now because of David Sling. Russia's not going to be able to attack Finland. So there has to be an alternative now where Russia's going to have to attack somewhere if they're going to make a move. I would think it's sooner than later, because otherwise they're going to be squeezed by NATO. And if you have a bunch of Iron Domes and David Slings on your border, you don't have a chance to defend yourself either. This is like a massive risk game going on right now. And it's a real game that's going on. So you can deny it and you can say, no, Shane, nobody would ever do stuff like this. No. Nobody would ever sell weapons to another country. Nobody's doing this stuff. Really? Really? You don't think countries try and protect themselves? All right, so I said a lot. It's been an hour-long monologue. Let's go to the comments and see what's going on here. I haven't had a chance to check the comments, so let's see what's going on. I am going to read from the bottom up. David Hook. Behold, he cometh with clouds. Maybe I'll start from the top here. Let's just start from the top. Zara, that's the name. Thank you for that. See, I should have read my comments. Zara and Perez. Hey, from MA. Where's MA? Hey, Sandra. Hey, Shane, huge fan of yours. Thanks, Pam. How would the rap now would be rapture nice? I'm out of money, can't pay my mortgage anymore. I feel you. But you know what's interesting is there is also, I believe, a wealth transfer that could happen as well from the unrighteous to the righteous. Maybe I'll make another video about that. You see that happen lots in the Bible. Supplanting, if you will. All right. Let's see here. What's going on here? Let's go down. Provided for 60 years, he'll make a way. Yeah, 100%. He's so good. Amen. Maybe the church can help. Let's see here. Ephraim. So awesome. All right. There seems to be conversation going back and forth. Okay, cool. God never never ceases to amaze me. He has done so much for me. I'm just seeing if anybody is. Just FYI, troops are moving into Rafah. So talking about a corner being formed, I think that's the last stage, if you will, that when Rafah gets overrun by, because I believe that's in the western part of the Gaza Strip. It's one corner, like basically along the Egyptian border, that if Israel goes in there and there's nowhere else to go, who knows what's going to happen. This is like what do you call it? Basically, this is a place that could actually explode overnight. It could. This could boil over overnight. It's interesting, right? Lots of stuff going on. Hey, Rick, my show tonight. Yep, Monday nights, bro. I have Bible study every Monday night. I'd love to be on your show tonight, but I have a Bible study. I have a men's Bible study every Monday night, so I drive into Calgary. Won't be long. So ready, live, okay. Have to do some yard work. Okay, see you, Rick. What else? Any other comments? Eye for eye, modern Israel edition. Yeah, exactly. And there is something to be said by that. That's baked into their constitution, if you will. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth. And it's in the commandments. So Jesus tried to give us a new commandment saying, look, if your brother needs something, give him not just your coat, but give him your cloak as well. Give him everything. If someone asks you to walk 1 mile, go with them 2. Sadly, Jesus should be the trump card. I agree 100%. And he will be. He will be. We'll see this where at the last minute he'll come in to save Israel, because if he didn't come back, Israel would be wiped out. That tells you something right there. The Jacob's trouble is going to be horrible. Do not wish that on any of your enemies. Do not wish that on anybody. Jacob's trouble is horrible. And if Jesus didn't come back in time, there would be no one left. Total decimation. That kind of reminds me of a nuclear holocaust globally. All right, let's see here. Hello, Team Jesus. Hi, Cheryl. Let's see what else is going on. Jews hope for the Spirit to be on them. We celebrate the Spirit is in us. There's a big difference. Yeah, and they also have confidence in their weapons right now. Let's just be honest. They're confident in the Iron Dome. And we know that the Iron Dome could be worn out, could be worn down, exhausted, if you will. All right, let's see here. What else do we have? Let's see. Revelation 1:7, behold, he cometh in the clouds, and every eye shall see him. Yep. So looking forward to seeing Jesus when he comes. Yeah, it just depends which way. Like if we're talking about the rapture, for sure. But if we're talking about him coming where every eye will see him pierced, that's a different. I think you want to be behind him. Like my good buddy John Foytier always says, if you're in a tunnel and you're looking at a light, you got to be careful, because that may not be the exit. That may be a train actually coming in that tunnel to mow you down. So you don't want to be, during the Battle of Armageddon, you don't want to be in front of Jesus Christ. You want to be behind him on a white horse when he comes down and takes care of all the nations that come against Israel. Can't wait. Going to be so incredible. Jacob's trouble is at hand. It's like they want God to be there, but not near. Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because, again, if you, I have a friend that was talking to a Jew, and he asked him, oh, no, it wasn't a friend. That was something else. This was in a documentary that I saw. Was it The Road to Zion, where a guy was talking to a Jew and said, hey, Isaiah, I'm not sure if it was my friend or if it was a documentary. Maybe somebody let me know if it was in the documentary. Basically, the guy was talking to a Jew and said, hey, have you read Isaiah 53? And the Jew said, I don't read the New Testament. I don't read it. So that gives you an idea that they don't read the Bible that you have in your hands. So you can't just walk up to anybody and expect them to have your understanding. It's just like walking up to someone on the street and then they accept the Lord and you're like, okay, do you understand Romans now? And they'll be like, what? What do you mean Romans? I'm not in Rome. What do you mean Romans? Well, you're a Christian. Yeah, but I just got saved today. Oh, you don't understand the Bible? What Bible? Where? What? When? How? Who? That's how we treat the Israelis. They don't know the Torah as much as we think. We're like, oh, just because you live in the land of Israel, we just think they just know the Bible. They memorize the Old Testament. They memorize the Apocrypha or whatever. They have everything down. They know the book of Enoch inside and out. We're kidding ourselves. They're secular in nature right now. You go up to an Israeli, they're like, do you go to church? And they're like, no. Do you go to a synagogue? No. I want people to just leave me alone and I'll get an education, all this kind of stuff. And I'm not religious. Oh, really? You're living in Israel and you're not religious? No. Interesting, right? Interesting. Anyways, hope you got something out of today. I know it was a little bit more of a monologue than you guys wanted, perhaps. But hopefully you got something out of it. I got to take off to a Bible study tonight, which should be pretty fun. But it's interesting to study the Bible, especially when you get to the book of Judges and you go through it. You're looking at it and you're like, man, wow. Israel is kind of like back then where they wanted to do their own thing and they relied on their weapons instead of worshiping God the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. You'd think being in the Holy Land that would just be automatic, but it's not so. Just like you think because we live in a Christian nation that we're all Christian. Not so. Not so. A lot of people just say they're Christians, but are not. A lot of people say that they're Jews, and they are not, but they're from the synagogue of Satan. A lot of people say they're apostles. They are not. They're liars. It's interesting, right? Wolves in sheep's clothing. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Anyways, hope you guys have a good day. I'm going to sign off. Feel free to subscribe to this channel if you got something out of it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And what else? Don't forget to share this video if you got something out of this. See you later. Bye for now.